Don't do a war of choice. War truly must be the last resort. Iraq was a war of choice, and it was perceived to be a reality because certain intelligence had been cherry-picked and the Bush administration believed it was some kind of reality, but it was a war of choice, and many within the administration, many of the intelligence agencies knew that. And for Russia, Ukraine is a war of choice, although many in Russia don't believe that. And certainly Vladimir Putin doesn't believe that. He believes it's an existential crisis. And I think over time, if you launch a war of choice, you're going to have problems. You're going to run into people who feel that you don't have the right to determine what happens in their homeland. And that happened in Iraq, and I think that's happening in Ukraine. So I think that's one lesson. The other lesson is how different they are. Iraq it started out as a traditional war. The United States military in uniforms went in, eliminated the Saddam government, 21 days marching up from the south to reach Baghdad. And then it became a more typical Middle Eastern war. Sunni versus Shia, Shia versus the United States, Kurds versus Arab, Arab versus Persian. So many different layers to it that needed to be explained. In Ukraine, you have both sides in uniform, trenches in between them, and a very clear narrative. One country is trying to take over and occupy the other one in flat terrain using tanks and artillery.
So get back to Iraq for a second. 20 years later, how are the Iraqi people doing? I mean, to what extent can you talk about better off, worse off trajectory as a consequence of the country that has been so much, for good and for bad, shaped by the United States of America?
I wish there was an easy answer saying they're better off, they're worse off. The people are freer. The economy is connected to the world. People who lived under Saddam's Iraq were not free in any possible way of imagining. The children were reporting on their adults if they spoke about any kind of perceived seditious activity. You couldn't go anywhere. The best you could hope for was to be left alone. And that wasn't even easy. So you had to toe the line and go out of your way to be left alone. And there were drafts. 1 million people were killed in the Iran-Iraq war, more or less for nothing. So it was a very dangerous place to live and a horrible place to live if you were an Iraqi. Then the Americans came and they gave them freedom, but they unleashed a civil war. So that was also horrible to go through, because what's the joy in being able to say what you want if somebody's going to come and cut your head off? And that happened a lot. There were assassination squads going around, killing Sunnis, killing Shias, and Shia killing Sunnis, and vice versa. And now the country is starting to emerge, but isn't quite accepted in the larger Middle East yet. So I don't think they have I don't think they've landed yet. The country's much safer. They are much freer. So they're better than they were under the Civil War. They're better than they were under Saddam, but they haven't been embraced as a fully functioning country yet. They are still half Iran, half Arab world, half corrupt, half semi-functional.